and a really warm welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining this webinar today. My name's Kate Marsden and I'm the Partnership Marketing Lead here at Canva. I'm really thrilled to be moderating this fireside chat today with Katie Smith, Head of Marketing and Comms at Linktree, alongside our very own Jacky Barker, our B2B social lead. So Jacky and Katie will be sharing their insights into how businesses can build an irresistible brand. So this coming together of Linktree and Canva is actually part of a broader partnership between our two companies. Earlier this year, we joined forces to enable Linktree's users to be able to design their Linktree profile image and background, all using Canva without leaving the Linktree platform. So at Canva, our mission is to empower the world to design, and it's with partnerships like this that we can get that one step closer to fulfilling that mission. So before I hand to Jacky and Katie to introduce themselves, let me run you through the format of today. So following the chat with Katie and Jacky, we're going to move into a demonstration of how you can actually start to build your irresistible brand using Canva and Linktree. This will be hosted by Jeremy, Head of User Success at Linktree, and Rebecca Flint, Canva's Senior Community Manager, who will both share insights, tips and tricks for setting up your brand across both platforms to achieve brand consistency. So let's jump right in and start with our guest, Katie Smith from Linktree. Katie, thanks so much for joining us today. We'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit more about Linktree and the company's amazing journey thus far.
Hi, Kate, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm Katie. I head up the brand marketing team at Linktree, which is the market-leading linking platform. And it's been a pretty wild ride. We've got 19 million creators, brands, businesses of all sizes using the platform to curate their online worlds. We're creating tools that allow anyone to monetize their passion and showcase their full identity online. And my team helps raise awareness of the brand. It spotlights our community stories and upskills our audiences. We are growing incredibly fast and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Great. Yeah, I've loved seeing the fast trajectory that Linktree's been on. Thanks again for joining us, Katie. There's so many synergies between our two companies, isn't there, Jacky? And would love for you to introduce yourself too and a bit about the Canva journey so far.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Jacky and I look after the B2B and employer brand social media strategy. And I've been with Canva over 3.5 years. So it's been quite the journey seeing Canva grow over this time. So I joined to build out the social and community team. And, it's been really interesting over those years seeing how the brand has evolved as well. And being a part of my role is how do we keep up with that brand evolution as Canva has grown on social media through that time. So yeah, really looking forward to having this conversation today and chatting a bit about my experiences.
Amazing. Thanks, Jacky. Well, let's dive in. The chat today is all about building an irresistible brand. So Katie, let's start with you. What does it mean to be an irresistible brand? And would love to know, are there any brands that really spring to your mind that have proven to be irresistible to you?
Yeah, when I hear irresistible brand, I really think of a brand that I can't look away from. So whether it's something in it that's a super aspirational lifestyle, or they're giving away brilliantly generous tips or life hacks, or they're having a conversation or a viewpoint that I'm not finding elsewhere. And I think it's in that viewpoint part that is really critical. When a brand shows up in a conversation authentically and they know when to join in and when to stay silent, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So how do you build that transparency and ownership of your brand? And I think if you get it wrong, it's about going above and beyond to fix it. It's about really owning that mistake. A great example of that was Zoom did that so well after their privacy issues in early 2020. But a brand for me that comes to mind when we're talking irresistible, it's the Savage by Fenty brand. It's got diversity and inclusion at its absolute core. It's got a really great cult following on social and a super use of a celebrity to kind of propel that brand message. It was one of the first brands in the lingerie space to really promote positive body image, and it completely overtook the market position of Victoria's Secret as a result. So that's a brand that really stands out for me.
Yeah, really great example. Jacky, over to you. Tell us what a brand means to be irresistible, and some examples if you've got some.
I love that mention as well of like diversity. So I don't know if you remember the Dove Real Beauty campaign, and it was like one of the first times that a brand had ever shown real women, and it was like groundbreaking at that time. But I think, you know, they latched onto that so quickly, and you know, that's what they are remembered for now, even though it's years old. So yeah, I really loved that campaign. But I think for me, like when I'm thinking about it, it's acting as you say you are. So it's fine to have these brand values, you know, that you write down, put all over the walls of your office, but you're not, if that's not in your DNA and it's not how you're living every single day, you know, you will get caught out on social media, for example. People aren't afraid to speak up anymore. So if you've got these values, it's like, what are you actually doing as a brand to live up to those values at every single touch point, you know, that you have with the community? So I think for me, it's actually being true to who you say you are. That's like what makes a really irresistible brand to me. And I think that leads me to talk about Patagonia. You know, their mission is, we're in business save our home planet. So they're all about climate change, and they donate 1% of all of their sales to actually positively impacting the climate. So, you know, it's really about acting on what those values are. And I think for me, that's what makes you really true, authentic, human. So I think that's really what you've got to consider when you're building a brand, because if these are my values, how am I going to live and breathe that every single day?
Yeah, I love the tie-in of values on both of those examples there. And yeah, they've really, the examples that you both gave have really nailed their brand and the way that they show up to their audiences. And I guess at the heart of what they're doing is communicating what they stand for in a visual way. So would love to jump in and start talking about, how does your overall branding strategy play into how you communicate visually, particularly across social? Jacky, let's start with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question, because looking at your brand strategy, like we've said, you know, it's got to tie through every single thing that you're doing. I'm going to use one of Canva's values, for example, which is make complex things simple. So when you're thinking about visual communication, and especially on social media, it's thinking about how can you translate that into what you're designing. So, you know, you'd have to think about what's the most simple, single-minded way I can deliver this message to my community. I think sometimes as brands, we can have 1,000 different things we want to say, but if you want to get cut through on social media, you've got to think, what's the one thing that I want someone to take away from this piece of content that they are seeing or interacting with? So I think for me, that's one way that you've got to try and think about those values and how does that actually translate into each piece of content that you're creating on social media. And you have to think about it, it's not about being overcomplicated. You don't have to be an amazing graphic designer to get cut through on social media. Look at the rise of creators. You know, anyone with a mobile phone can master social media. And, you know, they are really tactical, you know, about thinking about what am I trying to deliver through this one piece of mobile footage that I've got. So it's not about overcomplicating things. It's about thinking about that message. What do I want to say? And then making that happen. And I think, again, as well, with the values, one of ours is, you know, empowering others. So we're all about giving a voice to our community through social media. That's their platform, basically, to, you know, we're giving them a stage to really showcase how they use Canva, what goals they're achieving. So for me, you know, it's like looking back to that value, looking at your social strategy and what am I doing every single time I plan my content to make sure that those values are ultimately shining through everything you do.
Yeah, they're great tips to keep coming back and kind of sense checking, are those values kind of pulling through. Thanks, Jacky. What about you, Katie?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jacky was saying there, and to kind of build on it is like, what do I want to say and am I saying it? And then what's the action I want my audience to take from that, and making sure that that is also clearly discoverable. I think social is kind of it's a really critical place to build a rapport with your customer. And I think to do that, you need to reflect something in your brand that kind of the customer can see themselves within. And it might be that the kind of the tone of voice or the way that you're wording the content, it might be the imagery, it might just be something like the color palette, but find out what it is that your specific customers relate to, aspire to, or kind of have a natural bias towards, and then make that a part of your brand's identity. And I think again, social is just a fab playground for kind of testing those directions, polling, getting instant feedback, getting instant engagement statistics on what is resonating and what's not. So I would recommend using this or that polls to see what your customers like, and bring them really with you on that journey to get them personally invested in your brand.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll be talking more about some tips and tricks and tools shortly. But yeah, Katie, you mentioned social is a fun playground, but it can also be terribly noisy and overcrowded. So marketers are really challenged by having to have a presence across so many platforms. So how do you stand out? How do you be meaningful to your audience in such a noisy and crowded digital environment? What are some things that small businesses can do to stand out? Jacky, let's start with you.
I think, yeah, it's interesting. There's two parts of that, isn't there? And I think it's how do you stand out, but also be meaningful? And I think that's a really important thing here. It's about choosing the right conversations to be a part of. And I think it is so important with social media to be on top of trends, right? For small businesses, this is one of the quickest ways that you can go from not being known to being known with just one post. And so it is so important to be on top of everything that's happening. Like TikTok has supercharged this, the amount of people that go viral there. But to add that layer, you know, it's like, how can I make sure that this is a meaningful interaction? And that ultimately comes back to your brand, right? Does this align with my brand? Am I just joining this conversation for the sake of being a part of the conversation? Will this add value? Well, actually, it could take away value from your brand, if it's not something that goes back to those core values that we spoke about. So I think, it's really important that you're understanding your audience here, because then you know what trends that you should be taking, part of, really making sure that it is something that will be something that you want to be known for. So another way is also just continuously listening, right? So making sure that as you're going through social media, that conversation is always happening. So how can you tap into what people are saying, understand their behaviors, so that when these moments and opportunities come up, you can latch on in the right way. So I think it's, understanding. So as soon as you understand, you can connect. And ultimately, that's what you're competing for on social media. It's like you want to be the one brand that really connects to their core needs. And to do that, you have to understand their motivators. And there was this interesting stat, it's probably old now, but it's like people on Facebook would only follow one brand page. How are you going to be the brand that they follow? And that's all about connection. Like they connect with you more than any other brand that's out there in the world.
Yeah, this piece around connection and showing up in a meaningful way is certainly coming through. What about you, Katie? What are some tips or some thoughts you've got around how brands can stand out in such a noisy, cluttered environment that is social?
I'm amazed by that stat from Jacky. I love that. It's fascinating. So I think that just shows the kind of the scale of the need to really embed your values at the core of your brand. It's something that we're very, very passionate about at Linktree. We really have absolute faith in leaving the internet better than we found it, and democratizing the sharing of content online and the self-expression of creators on our platform. And that means that we have a role to show up in a big way in things that we care deeply about. So we had big activities around anti-racism and climate change, and will continue to. What do you do? Why do you do the thing that you do? What's your specific brand value, I think, is the question that you need to ask. And then zoom out and kind of look at your content and really question, is that discoverable the first time that your audience member interacts with your brand? And in a believable, an authentic, believable way, and not is kind of like, here is our value, now go and buy our things sort of way. And then I think, to kind of that cut through the noise piece, I think it's really important to, when you define your voice, you need to make sure there's enough kind of range and flex within it to suit a whole array of online and offline moments. So they might be that you need to be quite authoritative, or looking into a complaint, you need a certain tone of voice. And then you might need humor at another time to diffuse the situation, or you might choose to have a really sassy tone on social. But I think it's defining those and kind of setting those guidelines around who is your brand and how does it behave in different circumstances. That's really key.
Yeah, that's great, Katie. I think let's pull on that thread a little bit more as we start to talk a bit more around kind of brand consistency. So how do we start to carry the brand through all the different social channels and make sure that we are consistently showing up in the way that we've set and the way that you've just kind of spoke through? Jacky, I'll throw to you first.
Yes, and I think we'll both agree on this, but having some brand guidelines, it's one of the most important things you can do. So what is our tone of voice? What are our values? How do we look? How do we sound across all of these different channels? You've got to have something that can be cascaded across your business, because if you haven't got that, then that's when the consistency can start to fail, right? It's like if it's not clear for your employees, how is it going to be clear to the rest of the world? And I think that's one of the most important things you can do. And I think, you know, consistency at scale. So thinking of Canva as a global brand, we're not just looking at one market, we're looking at how can we make sure that this Canva brand is consistent across the whole world. And that is actually where Canva as a tool has been a game changer for us, because we can have a central brand kit, we can store all of our templates in one central place, and we can then share that with the rest of the local teams. So that for me is like one way, really quick and simple, just to achieve like consistency in the way that you look and feel. But I also like to think about, you know, brand as an exchange with the community as well. It's not just a look and a feel, it's a feeling, you know. So how do you want your audience to feel every time you connect with them? And, you know, we want our community to go away feeling empowered every single time they interact with Canva, whether they're on our website, whether they're seeing a social post, you know, whether it's a one-on-one interaction with our engagement team. You know, we create Canvified graphics, you know, they're personalized, saying like, we love what you're doing. You know, we go above and beyond to make them feel valued. So I would always ask the question, what do you want your audience to feel every time they interact with you? You know, and that should be consistent. It's not just the look and feel, but also that emotional attachment as well to your brand.
Sounds like there's a lot of alignment with what you were saying as well, Katie, in terms of some of the values and how Linktree shows up, and some of your missions around democratization as well. So how would you recommend brands show up consistently?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, that consistency piece, because the average social media user these days has 8 different social platforms. So social identity is incredibly complex and varied across platforms, and how you show up on Twitter might be different from how you show up on Instagram or even TikTok. And I think it's important to note that's okay. It doesn't have to be this kind of monotone across your platforms. In fact, we recommend kind of adapting your approach to different channels so it feels native as possible to that channel. So I think consistency is the kind of the underlying framework, and that's what gives you room to kind of the scope to kind of be creative on each platform. So it's making sure that you've incorporated those guardrails in the brand lines to account for it. It could be something simple like a ratio of content, that you're posting 1 product related piece of content every 3 educational posts. It's kind of drawing up that content calendar to make sure that the cadence is at least kind of set in stone, and then you can work out what you can duplicate across different platforms, and where are those kind of native or the channel specific conversations happening.
And I like what you've said there, because we call it the playground at Canva. So it's like, how far can you push your brand on each of the different channels? And I think that's so important because they're so unique, right? They've got different propositions. So like creating some guidelines around, on Twitter, we can push our brand as far as we want to go because it's really playful. Whereas on LinkedIn, we want to, you know, stick to our core values. And I think having that playground defined is also so important as well.
I love that playground.
Sharing tips within each other, that's great. All right, let's talk about, we've touched on a few challenges, but would love to really hear probably from your both personal experience as you've built the brands at Canva and Linktree. So what are some challenges you've faced whilst doing that? Jacky, let's start with you.
I think because the Canva brand has grown so much, and we started out as basically a consumer only product. So that was quite, you know, easy in that sense to know that that was the audience that we're talking to. And as we've scaled, there's obviously more audiences that we now interact with. Obviously, I'm looking after B2B, I'm looking after employer brand. So one of the challenges is, as your audience, you know, is growing and scaling, how do you adapt your messages to reach all of those audiences across social media? And, you know, that can be a real challenge to know, where should I speak to them? When's the right time? And kind of a tactic that we've, you know, implemented is, say you look at LinkedIn, it's starting to weight your your audience by channel. So on LinkedIn, we're going to speak 70% of the time to our B2B audience, 30% to our employer brand. So I think that's a way to actually overcome that challenge, is like when you do have, a really huge audience, where are they? Where are they interacting online? And what percentage of time do you want to interact with them in line with your business goals, right, as well? Because your business goals ultimately change all the time. And you need to be also willing to update your social strategy to align with those business goals. So, I'm saying it's 70-30% now. It might be 20, 80 next month. You've got to be willing to adapt and change. And I think, you've got to be flexible in that strategy as well. But having something documented is really, really helpful. And I think the other side, the flip side, is that it's not just where your audience are, but if our audience is growing that much, our product has also expanded massively as well. And I think as a business, we want to get all of these amazing things out there that we're releasing all the time. And as a business, you have to flip that mentality. It's not what we want to say, it's what the audience want to hear. So you have to, not be thinking about what message we want to get out there, but listening and understanding your audience and knowing what's the right products to push at the right time that are going to connect with them. And I've spoke about connection a lot, but if you're continuously listening to your audience, what they're asking for, what they're requesting, when you have that product launching, that's the thing to post on social media. We have limited territory, right? It's like social media might want to do 5 posts a week to keep the algorithm going. So you have to be super selective with what messages you share, and you ultimately can't put everything out there, even though that'd be amazing if we could. But I think, you've got to be really strategic with your decisions.
Yeah, thanks, Jacky. Quite a few challenges there, I guess. And as we prioritize, kind of really understanding what messages mean most to the customers. I really loved that point you made there. Some challenges, Katie, for you that you can share.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them overlap with what Jacky said. How do you talk to such a wildly diverse audience and still make it feel personal? So one of the ways we do that is, we're getting where the audience is, we're getting into the comments, and we're really kind of trying to get on a level with them. So yeah, agreed. That's a big challenge. I think another one for us, we're in a very crowded space with many tools and platforms fighting to be the dominant platform for creators. And what we're saying is you don't have to choose a Linktree. We're kind of platform agnostic. And that's quite a different message within the marketplace. We're saying we'll make any and all of your platforms drive towards growth in your business, or grow your audiences bigger, or have deeper connections and more sales. I think it's tough in a marketplace where people are trying to have that singular play to zoom out and be platform agnostic. That's a struggle for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess what we'd like to kind of move on to now, and given we're both coming from online brands, I guess a lot of people who will be watching today actually have an offline and a physical presence. So what are some tips or advice you've got on those brands that need to connect, their online to their offline experience and make that, again, really consistent? Jacky?
I think we've said this a lot already, but if your brand guidelines are, defined, this should be like quite an easy thing to do, because you know what you want them to feel, right? You know what you're trying to achieve. So it doesn't matter whether it's an online experience or an offline experience, that feeling that they get from connecting with you should be consistent across both of those experiences. So it should be replicated in the same way that it is online, offline as well. And I've got like a real life example of this, which I found out in lockdown. So this is about surprise and delight. So the local coffee shop, they, when we went into lockdown, started to write really nice little messages on top of the coffee cups, and it was really nice. So I'd take a photo of it, post it on social media, I'd tag them, and then they would also come back to me with a really nice message through my Instagram story DMs. So you can see there how, that positivity, that proactivity to engage with the community and give that feel good feeling was there through the offline experience all the way to the online experience. And I just love, they're called The Coop. I should give them a shout out, really, and Bronte. But yeah, they were really, really amazing. And I think it's also that practical level, like how are you connecting the two if you've got an online and an offline experience? is your hashtag on the menu if you're a food brand? You know, are you actually encouraging people to seamlessly be able to discover your brand when they're in an offline situation and take it online? And similarly, so I think, you know, you've got to do some practical ways of making sure your marketing materials are up to date to connect those as well. But it's also, you know, tying in that feeling as well as like the visual kind of communication side also.
I know where I'm getting my coffee next when I'm at Bronte in Sydney. Katie, would love to hear some of your tips for standing out and keeping that consistency between online and offline.
And it's something that we have seen so much over the past, 18 months, when there are so many companies trying to digitize and using Linktree to do that. I think personally that I can, there's the new generation. They're not framing the offline and online in the same kind of modes way that typically we have been. So I think it's becoming more blurred and it's becoming more complex. But there are kind of, tools, platforms, opportunities for us to control how we share ourselves with the outside, with the online and offline worlds. I think it's really critical to have tools that allow us to kind of reel in when we want to be a little bit more private, or kind of amplify when we're open to being more digitized. But in a practical sense, if you've got an offline experience to offer, then you can make it super, super easy for your customers to find you online with a QR code. And that's something that we're all seeing a lot more at cafes and restaurants, maybe even the Coop. They're super key. So if you're online, you're trying to find ways to connect offline, maybe that means you're packaging goods in a specific way, or maybe there's a kind of a ritual that you do as part of your product onboarding, something that humanizes your brand to show that you can live between the two.
Yeah, so fantastic. We started to talk a bit there around tools, so let's keep unpacking that a little bit. It can be pretty overwhelming, I think, for businesses as they start to build their brand. There's so many tools out there that can really help and support them. But it can be a little bit overwhelming to figure out which ones are going to work for you. So Katie, let's start with you. What tools have you found particularly important when trying to find information about your target audience?
I think it's getting in there and asking them, doing the qualitative research, the focus groups, the surveys, finding your community touch points, and really kind of, as I said before, getting in the comments, getting to know them. And I think a nice way to do that is give to get. So what resources or education or support can you exchange in turn for that information or loyalty? Another one which I think you can do no matter the size of your business is be your own brand auditor. Become a customer of other brands you admire and figure out what it is that gets you to click into their email or gets you to like one of their social posts, and audit your competitors. Keep a really simple spreadsheet of how often are they posting, and what types of content are they pointing to when they post. So you really become a kind of a brand expert. And then lastly, I'd say review sites. Dig into them, find out what did people most like about your product or service, and is there a common thread between those comments. And it gives you a kind of an early indication of where your audience see your product market fit, and why they're seeking out your brand.
Katie mentioned like something important there. It's just about listening most of the time. It's like the people are talking, there's conversation happening. So how can you just make sure that you are in that conversation and understanding what people are saying? And I think Canva's got actually very far without having to spend a lot of money on tools, because of all the amazing native tools that are out there embedded within the social platforms as well. So, looking at analytics, so your standard Facebook, Instagram insights, understanding your content performance, right? If it's getting a lot of comments, a lot of likes, a lot of interactions, you ultimately know that that's something that is connecting with your audience. So that's something that you want to keep going. If it's not performing very well, it's like thinking, what can I do to improve this? Or is this message just not hitting the mark? So the more you do that, the more you're actually understanding what your audience want to connect with as well. And we've mentioned, social listening as well. So, stereotypically people might associate that with needing, a tool in place to do that. But there are tactical ways, for example, using Boolean logic, which is a bit of a buzzword, but on Twitter, for example, you can search for Canva and work or workplace, and it will only bring up conversation around that particular topic. So it means that you can be understanding what people are talking around a certain topic related to your brand really easily, and finding ways that you can maybe jump into that conversation at that time. So they're kind of like two really tactical ways. And I think if you have the opportunity as well, it's building a space for community. Community is the most amazing place to get feedback. We created one called Canva Design Circle, which is basically our advocates, and they're continuously sharing in there what they love about the product, what they don't love, what they'd like to see. But all of that information is super amazing for us to inform our content strategy, to inform the product as well. And, we can then share that feedback loop back to the business to make sure that our audience are being heard.
Yeah, great. Lots of listening is what I'm hearing you both say. So what about prioritization of tools and channels? We've talked about that can be a challenge. There's so many. Any tips that you've given or you've used for yourself in prioritizing what tools and channels are used that you can share with the audience? Jacky, you had started talking a little bit about this in the last response, so we'll throw back to you.
Yes, and I think this comes down to that strategy piece and the research piece, because you have to ultimately understand where your audience are to make sure that you are choosing the right channels and understanding, who your audience are, how they behave, what they interact with. And I think, audience personas are a super important part of that strategy. And you don't have to be investing tons and tons of money in market research to understand that. It's like, who's coming into your shop if you've got a shop, who is following your Instagram page, and you can build up a summary of their, their profile and who they are, and use that as a guide to think about the content that you're creating and channels that you should be on. And I think it's ultimately quality over quantity. And when you understand where your audience are, you can really streamline where you're going to exert your effort. And, I always say it's best to just be in a few places rather than trying to thin yourself spread just to have spread yourself thin to have a presence everywhere. So that way you can easily prioritize certain channels that are definitely going to connect with your audience. Maybe you don't need to be on Facebook if you're a B2B brand, make that decision and just put all of your effort in LinkedIn, where you're going to have much more of an impact.
Fewer, bigger, better is what I'm hearing you say, Jacky. Yeah, great. Katie, what about you?
Echo everything Jacky said, really. I think it's kind of also figuring out who your specific highest value customer is, and that's based on whichever metrics make sense to your business. So it might be around referrals or advocacy or engagement, and then kind of dive really deep into the analytics around these people and why they're coming back to you. It might not be the ones who make the biggest purchases that always come back to you, or the ones that refer other clients at high rates. So yeah, outlining who your ideal kind of high value customer is, as well as your broader audience, is the only add-on I'd have there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, let's wrap this up with sharing some overall branding lessons for early stage companies trying to establish their brand. What are some top overall lessons that you've learned along the way that you can share? Jacky.
Yes, I think we've used this word so much in this conversation, values. So define your values and keep them at the heart of every single thing you do. That's the most important thing. You'll get caught out if you're not living up to your brand. So make sure that is at the heart of everything you do. Understand the audience. It's about you. No, wrong way. Understand the audience. It's about them, not you. So make sure that you are always putting your audience at the heart of your decisions, because you can never go wrong if you are doing that. Also, evolve and adapt to your company and the world. Your brand is not stagnant. It does not have to stay the same. We've evolved from a consumer brand into a B2B brand, and comes with that a lot of changes, but you have to be willing to adapt to what you need. Be human and transparent as well. So brands, are human at the end of the day. There's humans behind them. And the more you can showcase that, the more your audience is going to connect with you, which has been my favorite buzzword for this conversation. How can you get people to connect? And then consistency at every touch point. It's really thinking about that online and offline experience, how you can connect it all so people go away saying the same thing no matter how they interact with you. So they would be my key lessons, I think.
Fantastic. Connection and values. Yeah, it's definitely come through loud and strong from both of you today. Katie, some final lessons from you.
Yeah, and I think again, some of this overlaps with Jacky. Number one, get feedback. And I think it's really important to say, listen to some of it, but don't build a brand by consensus. You, at the end of the day, have to love the brand that you're working with. So yeah, still retain some ownership, make sure that it reflects you as well. Number two would be the consistency piece. Define what consistency means to your brand and repeat on it. So create simple guidelines, even if you're a business of one, create those guidelines so that you just have a sense of that defined. And then number three would be look at data, test, learn, iterate, all of those data buzzwords, but become really, really curious about what other brands are doing. Everything is a brand. So analyze what you're drawn to and really ask yourself, why am I drawn to this? Ask people in your network for for their data too. And keep on getting to know your customer. Don't assume that you are ever done knowing them, because it endlessly evolves.
I love that. Testing and learning and curiosity, really fantastic lessons. Katie and Jacky, thank you so much for all of the insights you've shared with us today about building an irresistible brand. You've been super generous with your time and your insights, so huge thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And so now I'm excited to hand over firstly to Jeremy from Linktree, and then Rebecca from Canva for some demos, insights, tips and trips on getting your brand across both platforms to achieve brand consistency. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks so much for those insights. Y'all, really appreciate it. I'm Jeremy. I'm the head of user success at Linktree, and I want to talk with y'all about how Linktree can be super valuable for businesses and brands. So I have pulled up here in front of me a sort of demo Linktree of a fitness brand, so I can walk you through some of what Linktree can do and how you can use it and all that sort of good stuff. This health and wellness space is definitely just one of the many, many verticals that folks will use Linktree in. A lot of different types of brands use us across fashion and beauty and realtors and lawyers and doctors and you name it. So, but today we wanted to showcase Linktree with this profile, Wild Buck Fitness. So whenever I start telling folks about Linktree, I always like to give them context about what we're really good at. And that is pulling all of your content into one space and framing it in your own way. So as a business or a brand, you often will have a lot going on. You definitely have social channels that you want to point people towards so that they can follow you and stay connected. You might be selling particular products. You might be on a Spotify sorry, you might have a podcast that you were featured in. You might have been featured in a press article, you name it. But the idea is that no matter what you're working on here, you could put it all into one space and frame it in a way that fits with your brand voice. The other thing that I think is really, really important to share with folks is the wide use case for a platform like Linktree. So a lot of people initially think of us as a platform to solve the bio linking problem on Instagram so that you can share more than one link from your bio, and that's all well and good. But what's been really wonderful to see over time is folks using us anywhere their audience engages with them. So a lot of people will use us in their Twitter bio, they'll use us in their Facebook description, they'll use us in their TikTok bio. That's been a huge area of growth for us recently. And something that I want to show y'all from our admin over here is that every Linktree comes with a QR code. So if you're selling physical goods, for instance, or you have a business card, you can slap this onto that physical item and create a really nice bridge between the physical and the digital. So the thinking with all of this is that as long as the links in your Linktree here, or I should more appropriately say here, are up to date, the thinking is that anywhere your Linktree is living is going to be pushing that most up-to-date content as well. So one link that you can share in all these different places, and if you update it once, those updates push to everywhere that you are online. So yeah, from there, I just wanted to show y'all a couple interesting things that Linktree does. So, our core mechanic obviously is just this ability to add a link. Adding a new link is very simple. You click this button and you have the option to add whatever URL you want to correspond with it, as well as what you want that link to actually be called. We don't have a real website for Wild Buck Fitness, so we're linking to Google, but you can see here that it's very straightforward to put this together, and you can toggle this on and off depending on if you want your link to be active or not. So, and also whenever you create a new link, after you've done so, it's really easy to move it around within your dashboard. You would just click on this and move it into whatever position you'd like. So something that's been really exciting though that we've been working on lately is building out what we call link types. And so link types are ways for visitors to complete an action without leaving your profile. And so I want to show a couple of those today. A lot of those link types are generated from link recognition. So what will happen is that if you add a link to a particular service that we support richer functionality for, when you add that link, there will be a little icon that will appear down here, in this case, Spotify, for instance, that shows that we recognize the link, and then we'll give you different options for what you can do with that link. So you can always still just link out to a link that's normal, but we also give a lot of different options for embedding the experience into a Linktree profile. So what do I mean by that? To put this into practice, let's look back at that Spotify link that I was just showing. So if I was a visitor, or sorry, let's say that, Wild Buck Fitness here, they have a podcast that they're trying to share with their audience. They've added a link to that podcast on Spotify. We've recognized it as such, and they've chosen to embed that Spotify link into their Linktree. You'll see a little caret next to the link that indicates there's something richer underneath it. And you'll see that rather than clicking out to Spotify itself, the actual entire experience of the podcast is embedded into here. So the thinking really among these link types is that, well, actually, I think it's even clearer with the next one I'll show you. So in addition to Spotify link types or Spotify links that you can embed in here, we do also let you embed an assortment of different video services as well. So specifically, if you add a link to your Linktree that's hosted on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Vimeo, or Facebook, we'll also give you that similar option to embed it into your profile. So once again, rather than clicking out to this YouTube video, for instance, it can be a one-click expand and play experience. So really what I love about these link types is that rather than having to sort of click into something and then leave the page and then have to find your way back to the Linktree to discover more content, what this allows someone to do is, or it allows visitors to discover more pieces of content in one session. So for instance, for this fitness brand, they might be showing a workout session that they do, and maybe this person is doing a partnership with a yoga mat company, and they can put a link to have folks purchase the yoga mat that they're using in this video right in the link below. And this is obviously just talking about a fitness brand, but the possibilities are definitely endless there. We do also, like I mentioned, we let you embed specific TikTok videos as well. So if there's one that has gone particularly viral or something like that, this could be a really great way to make sure that folks are seeing the right content in front of them, and the whole time not having to actually leave your profile to get that experience. And then the last one I wanted to share right now is it's one of what we call our commerce links. So these commerce links allow folks to, visitors to complete transactions without leaving your profile. So one of these that I have in place today right here is called a request link. And this essentially allows a user to offer a service to a visitor in exchange for money. So in this case, for instance, sorry, it says form link, it should say request link. But in this case, you can see rather than leaving the Linktree to go through this flow, I can actually go through the entire experience of giving Wild Buck Fitness money in exchange for their 30-day workout plan. So this is definitely, the goal of this is to reduce the friction of folks completing a transaction and completing a transaction for whatever you might be selling. We do also have a support me link, which is very similar, except it's a little more straightforward. It essentially works like a tip jar. So if you're starting up your new business, for instance, and you want folks to contribute to that, you could set up a commerce link for that as well, that special support me link, and you would be able to collect tips and donations from folks to help you there. So yeah, there are plenty more link types and a lot more in the pipeline as well. But those are definitely the ones that I'd want to focus on right now. Beyond that, I know that understanding your audience is a really important thing for businesses and brands. And I just wanted to really quickly run through, our analytics page right here. So this is part of our pro offering. You get this dedicated analytics page where you're able to get a much better sense of who's engaging with your Linktree and how. So you're able to look at your performance up to a 30-day period. And within that window, you're able to click through here and see how many unique visits you've gotten to your Linktree, how many totals you've gotten, what your click-through rate has been over time, all that sort of good stuff. If you're receiving transactions, you can look at information about that here. Unfortunately, I'm not popular enough to get any transactions yet. Beyond that as well, I might need to reload this, excuse me. Cool, so you're able to also look at your Linktree's traffic by country and by city, as well as your respective click-through rates in those spaces. So this is not the most popular Linktree in the world, but if you were starting a business that was selling its goods internationally, this could be a really great way to see where you've been garnering interest. And another module that I find particularly helpful to share with folks is this top refers space. So this is where if you do choose to put your Linktree on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and use it as a QR code on your business card and all these different things, this is where you'd be able to look and see which of those different channels is generating the most traffic for you. So ideally, if you can understand where people are coming from, you can know where you should be spending your advertising dollars, where you should be producing more content, all that sort of good stuff. And then the last sort of big bucket that I wanted to share about right now is just how you can customize your Linktree to make it look and feel really wonderful. So anyone who uses Linktree is able to choose from one of our built-in themes. When you're a pro user, though, you are able to create your own theme, and you get a whole bunch of different options on how to set up your background, the different fonts, there are different button styles and colors that you can pick, and there are different fonts you can pick as well. But something that I definitely wanted to highlight here is that one of the options for actually not only changing your background image, but also changing your avatar on your Linktree, and this is something that obviously anybody can do. You're able to design your avatar or your background image using Canva. And so to speak a little bit more about that, I wanted to throw to Rebecca Flint at Canva to talk about this a little bit more.
Wow, Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing all those super cool tips with us on how to set up your Linktree. Hey there, I'm Rebecca Flint. I'm from Canva here in Sydney, Australia, and I'm the Senior Community Manager for the Canva Champions and CCC's groups. So what is Canva? Canva is a graphic design platform that makes it easy to design anything and publish anywhere. And a lot of what I'm going to show you today is actually available on our free version of Canva. However, there are some super cool tips that I'm going to share with you that are only available to those of you who use Pro. Now, don't fret. If you don't use Pro yet, I'm going to share a super special code with you so you get to trial it free today as well. So today we're going to talk about brand consistency, the difference between branding, brand, and brand ID. I know it can get confusing. And then how to take your brand identity to build out your Linktree using Canva. So Canva helps you design consistently branded content that helps you to emotionally connect with your audience. And if people recognize and connect with your brand emotionally, you win. At Canva, we like to make complex things simple. So today I'm going to break down and demystify the difference between branding, brand, and brand ID. So people often think their brand is a logo, and therefore branding is putting that logo onto things. And that's part of it. However, there is a little bit more to it than just that. So your brand is made up with these 4 buckets. And today we're going to focus on the one on the far right, which is actually your brand identity. So your brand identity is one of those 4 buckets that makes up your overall brand. The brand represents the relationship that you or your company have with your target audience. And at the end of the day, it's really about what your audience thinks about your product or service that really counts. Branding, put really simply, is just a strategy that brings those 4 buckets together. The key to successful branding is to align what you think your audience thinks about your product or service with what they actually do think. And essentially, it's an alignment of values and promises that leaves them feeling a certain way after they've experienced your product or service. Okay, so we're going to take a little detour here and talk about the difference between personal branding and corporate branding. So personal branding is positioning you as the expert in your industry or niche and how you communicate your value to your audience. You can hear there's a lot of you and your in there, and it really humanizes the brand by having a person behind it. However, corporate branding or business branding is essentially positioning the business as the industry leader. It's communicating its values to its audience. So you can hear there's lots of it's in there versus the you on the personal branding side of things. So here's some examples of what a corporate or business brand identity may look like. And you can see here it's very logo based, kind of the icon and the typography and the colors versus a personal brand, which also adds that human element to it. So you can see there's a real difference between a personal brand and a business brand. Now, what if you want to build both? This is something that we do in a gym that I own called Fitness Box. I own this with my brother and my husband. And although I don't work in the business, they both do a very good job of running it. And what we do in that business is utilize the personal brands of each of the trainers to build the overarching brand as well. And this is something that you can consider to do within your business. If you're predominantly marketing and advertising the corporate or business brand, start to have a think about how you could utilize the values and the education and the skill set of your team and help to build their personal brands. Because by doing this, you're going to attract like-minded audiences that are going to help to build your overarching business or corporate brand. Once you've decided on what type of brand will suit your business, let's look at building out your brand ID. Before you start designing any logos or doing any brand identity work, let's have a look at what you need to know about your audience first. So building a brand persona or avatar is really important to help connect people out there with your product or service. So if you can really get to know the basic demographics of who your audience are, so things like age, marital status, location, how many children they have, occupation, that type of thing, and combine it with what their goals are, their values, their challenges, and their pain points, it's really going to help you build a profile that will assist to connect your products and services with your audience. And when you consider also where they hang out and what type of industry conferences they're attending or what platforms they're on, it's really going to help you market your brand and your brand identity more effectively. So let's get into the fun stuff. Let's start looking at building out your brand identity. So as we talked about before, your brand identity is one of those 4 buckets. Your brand identity is made up of your logo, your tagline, your colors, imagery, typography, and messaging. Now, here's a little demo brand that I built out, and it's called Wild Buck Fitness. So the brand identity elements are made up of the logo and typography, which you can see on the left there, the tagline, which is commit to be fit. We've got a primary color palette with just 4 simple colors. And we have a range of imagery that really starts to convey the type of service that this business is. Now, with your brand messaging, I highly recommend that you follow the story brand method. And there's a book called Story Brand by Donald Miller. I definitely recommend reading that and following that formula to build your brand messaging. It's really powerful. Okay, so here you can see some branded artwork. So I've taken that brand identity and I've created some branded artwork that really helps to convey the look and feel of this business. So you can see that it's a friendly, very motivating, inspiring, kind of functional training or CrossFit style business. And you can see here by combining all of the elements of the brand identity with some offers or some messaging, it really helps to bring all of those elements together to have consistent look and feel across all of the things that this business promotes. How do you stay consistent in everything you do? So if you've got teams spread all over the world, you want to make sure that everybody is creating the same type of artwork. Now, if you don't have team all over the world, that is totally fine as well. We're going to show you how to keep your brands consistent in every single piece of marketing collateral that you create for your brand. Now, if you are a solopreneur or just a little tiny small business, you may consider just having a brand board. And this is just a one-pager that breaks down what your logo is, what your colors are, and what the hex color values are for those colors. You've got your fonts that you use, a selection of imagery, and maybe some graphical elements. Now, if you're a little bit bigger or you want to get a little bit more in depth, you may want to create what's called a brand guide cheat sheet. Now, this just goes a little step further. It breaks all of your colors down into all of the color values that you'll need for creating different types of print or on-screen work. So you can see there we've got the RGB color values, which is red, green, blue. We've got the hex and HTML, which you would use for website building or also for Canva. You've got Cmyk, which is a 4-color process used for digital printing. And we go into a little bit more depth there on where to use what font styles and why, and also the different types of logo variations. So this is just a little bit more information that you could pass off to a graphic designer or your VA. Or if you have a small team in-house, you just make sure that everybody's staying consistent in what they're doing. Now, if you're a much bigger organization, you really should have a set of brand guidelines. This is kind of like a brand Bible in a way. It really helps to break down every single element of your brand identity and takes it a step further by giving you an example of where to use things and why you can't use a logo on a certain image, how all of your branded items look and feel, and really goes into the rules around tone of voice and language and messaging and that type of thing as well. You may want to consider building out a complete set of brand guidelines if you have teams spread across the world or different offices. It just really helps to maintain that consistency in everything that you do. So let's see now how Canva can help you with keeping your brand consistent across everything that you design. You can start by creating a new document or create a piece of artwork with a custom size. There is literally endless ways to start a beautiful piece of artwork with Canva. Now, if you're not a designer, this is not a problem. You can search and add a template to kickstart your creativity. Now, if you have a free account, there is over 270,000 templates that you can use to create a beautiful piece of artwork. Or if you have a pro account, there's over 420,000. So endless possibilities there to get started and be inspired. So once you've chosen a template, it is really simple to edit that template to match your brand identity. So you want to start by making sure that you've got all of the right content in there first. So get an image in, pop your text in, edit the text, add any other graphic elements that you want or need, and then you're ready to go. Okay, now you've got that beautiful template. Let's make sure it's on brand. So with Brand Kit, you can upload a logo and your brand colors and fonts. Now this is in the back end of Canva and it's going to really help you create consistently branded materials as we move forward. And I'm going to show you how to do that later. Now with the free version of Canva, you get to add 3 colors and your brand fonts. However, with Pro, you get to add all of your logos, your fonts and multiple color palettes. And a recent release, which is super cool, allows you to have multiple brand kits. So if you're managing multiple brands within your business or you have different products, programs and services, say for example, if you're a coach, this is a really great way to keep your brand identities separate, but allows you to create consistently branded material across everything you're doing. Okay, now you have Brand Kit set up. This is where the magic happens. You can now use the Style tab to quickly and easily change any template to suit your brand. Just by clicking on the colors or the fonts allows you to update your template quickly and easily.
Now you have that beautiful post designed, you can actually publish directly to Facebook from within inside the Canva platform. Now, if you don't want to publish it directly to Facebook, you can also download your files as well. The different types of files that you have access to are SVG, which is special vector graphics, a JPEG file, a PNG file, a GIF, or an MP4. So the possibilities are endless with creating designs on Canva and being able to use multiple file types to share and present your artwork. Now, you can also publish directly to Instagram. So remember, you can do this on the go as well. We have an app for iOS and Android, so there's no need to wait to get back to the office to do this. You can do this quickly and conveniently from your phone. This is a great way to see how your posts will look on a mobile device as well. Okay, so here's some sample artwork that I created. Now I used the resize tool to go from a poster to an Instagram post. And then I took that post and made an Instagram story. And then I went from the story and created a Facebook cover. Now I've got some beautifully branded artwork. I can come across the Linktree now and set up my profile. So we're going to go in and add in our tagline first and make sure that that's in there to keep consistent with our messaging. And that's commit to be fit. After that, I'm going to go and add my profile picture. I click pick an image and then I design with Canva. Now I want kind of a business feel, so I'm going to go with the business link tree. And I found this template that I really like that I think I can edit to really suit this brand. So I just simply click the colors, and because we loaded our colors in BrandKit, they're very easily accessible right there for me at the top. I just click these other elements and I add this kind of lime green color, and I think that's looking pretty cool. Now I need to add a photo, and this is my gorgeous husband. So I add my photo of the personal trainer. Now, because we're building a corporate brand and a personal brand, I have the photo of the human being in the profile, but I'd like to add my logo to it as well. So I'm using the personal brand and the corporate brand together. So I just simply place that on the page. And once I'm done, I just head on up and press publish. Now, within a couple of seconds, you'll see that it's prepping my design, and then it's going to load in Linktree. And there it is. Now that looks super cool, but the aqua color is running into the background. So I want to change the background. So I come in again and I go design with Canva. And again, I want kind of a business Linktree profile background kind of look and feel. So I found this design that I really like. And again, I'm just going to go in and select the colors, go to the color palette and pick my brand colors. Now I can play around with this a little bit until I kind of find something that I like. Now, don't worry too much if you're not sure if it will work or not, because you can just do what I'm doing here and kind of have a little look around, go and publish it, and see how it looks. Okay, it's going to populate there. Yeah, I like it, but my profile image is running into the background again. So I'm just going to go in there and edit it a little bit more just to make sure that that background is in fact black and the profile image is going to stand out a little bit more. So this is a really cool way to test what you think will look really good within Linktree. Let's take a look and see how it looks now. And there we have it. That is a much nicer looking background. And you can see that it goes really nicely with all of the other elements that I've created for my brand. Now you can share that, or you can go up to the top, click on the link and see how it views as a desktop as well. Now that's looking pretty cool and I'm really happy with that. Now, if you have any questions after today, I'd love you guys to join our Canva Design Circle. This is our community on Facebook and it has hundreds of thousands of members in it who all come together and share their designs and ask questions, and they get really well supported by the community. Thank you so much for having me here today. I have thoroughly enjoyed teaching you everything about the difference between branding, brand and brand ID, how to keep your designs consistent, and of course, how to populate your Linktree with a beautiful branded profile photo and background.
Thanks, Rebecca. And just a final thank you to all of our 4 speakers today, Katie, Jackie, Jeremy, and Rebecca, for all the insights and tips that you shared. And a special thank you to everyone for watching. We hope that this provides you some value in building your irresistible brand. Thank you.